Hey, g'day, it's Prezzo here back in the shop, and check this out, isn't this cool? This was made for me by, well, I call him my YouTube friend. I met him through the comments section of YouTube, and his name is Rick King, and he runs a company called Australian Custom Metalwork Design. Now, Rick invited me up to his workshop to have a look around, but also he was offering to give me a large amount of scrap brass. Now, Rick does these beautiful CNC plasma cut signs and also other sorts of artwork, and he works in stainless steel, which is what this is, but also he works in brass and weathering steel, and I was keen to check out what he does. So while I was there, he cut this out for me, and I wasn't expecting it, but I'm going to turn this into a bit of shed art. So I'm going to put some LED lighting behind this, put it on the wall and jazz up the workshop a bit. So in this video, we're going to look at Rick's workshop, look at some of his machines. We're going to see the process of cutting out one of these signs and also the treatment of the metal afterwards. And we're going to look at the process of turning a large amount of scrap brass into something useful. In this case, Rick wanted some machining blanks to repair his nut-all lathe, so we're going to have a look at that as well. So let's get going. Okay, I'm here today with Rick King. Rick's invited me up to his workshop to have a look at a specific job that we're going to try and solve. And Rick is doing all of his own plasma cut signage. We're going to have a look at that in a minute. He's got a job that he's going to run for me. So Rick, can you just tell us your background, how you got started in this sort of business you're in now?
Yeah, well, I'm an Army veteran. I got medically discharged around 2008 and I was pretty lost. I started getting into metalwork. Then it sort of just took off from there, and I've been doing it ever since. I used to do everything by hand, but now I use the CNC. But it's like therapy for me, basically, so it keeps me going. Yeah.
So your business name's Australian Custom
Metalwork Designs.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you sell on commission as well as you do stock designs?
Yeah, I've got my own designs, plus I've got designs what the military have given me with special permission. But yeah, I'll do, garden art or interior design or whatever, someone wants.
And what sort of materials are you using?
All my brass comes from Germany. I don't use the cheap brass. And the stainless steel I use is 316 stainless, so it's high corrosive, resistant material.
And you were saying the steel, the weathering steel it's not Corten?
No, I use Corten plus Lighten. It's a weathering steel. I use it in architecture or bridges or any application where you don't have to paint, because the oxide layer protects the metal.
Okay.
Within, yeah.
So the job we're going to do is, Rick's just been showing me here. We've got a gear that fits over this spline. It's actually a brass spline. So we're going to try and cast some stock material to replace this little splined attachment here. And because Rick's got all of this spare brass, all the offcuts, I'm going to take that home. We're going to melt that in the furnace. We're going to cast some blanks so we can do all of these. So we're going to try and replace all of these. And in a follow-up video, I'm going to show the casting of the brass, and then hopefully we'll follow it through and see these new parts made.
Alright, so this is your design here. What I have to do now is add cut paths.
Right.
It's asking, convert the holes first. So you want to do that because that's the centre.
Yes.
You don't want to do it afterwards. So that's it there. You zoom in, make sure everything's good to go.
So do you have to manually add the breaks in the lettering?
You don't have to manually, but you can go...
Or do you use the typeface? It's already got the...
type, but you can go into advanced, custom. You can change your spacing in here.
Okay.
All that sort of stuff. There's plenty of fonts,
Oh, okay.
heaps of different fonts you can do. Yeah, so they're like that. You can do a test run. So we'll just go up to machine, cut preview.
Okay.
I'll slow this down a bit, and I'll actually tell you where it's going to go, and where it finishes.
So it gives you a run time as well?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Then it should do the end cut path after you know.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's how that goes. But when you start the machine, you have to get your computer linked up with the brain of the machine. So you go to settings, detect machine. It'll come up with any errors. Hopefully there's no errors. Yeah, detected. That's good. Then you have to initialize. So it's going to go to home.
Right.
So it's like a datum point and home point.
Yep.
Then from there I can move it anywhere on the... What I do from here, just to make sure, you know, if you're using the sheet with stuff already cut out of it, you move it around, yeah, that's good to go there.
So you can just set an offset anywhere you want?
Yeah.
Okay.
There. So it's all good. And
So you just, what, they were the two corners that you ran it to?
yeah, that was
Okay.
the left and the bottom.
Okay.
So, yeah, so it's all good to go. And what I do from there, I just make sure it actually works. Alright, good to go.
Yep. That is so cool. That's
I'll
great.
Give it a wash for you.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's good stuff. There's your stainless.
Great. Grinding the edge of that was not only to remove the dross, that's, you're talking about the carbon on the
Yeah, the
cut
carbon
surface?
on the outside, because that will rust.
Okay.
Because when we're cutting on the table, the grid is actually made of mild steel.
Right.
You get a bit of that throwing up on there.
Okay.
Even though it is 316 stainless, it will rust.
Okay.
I'll just get wax and grease remover. Protects the metal inside. What I'll do now now, I have to go back to the Dremel tool and do the letters.
What, the insides?
Yeah.
Oh, I can do that if you...
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah, I got it done. So what do you use, a grinding point or like a carbide point? What it looks like in the sun. Oh, can't see a thing. Oh, there we go. Yeah,
There you go.
that's brilliant.
Blinded by the light.
Yes. Telling you before, this is the first one you ever did?
Yeah, first or second one. I've done that for Dad. But yeah, it's all done by hand.
Right.
Looks a bit rough compared to me work I do now. But
So you've gotten a bit better over the years.
yeah, and there's one up here too. That's I've done that by hand.
Thruxton,
Yeah,
that's a motorbike?
yeah, Triumph, and hit it with candy paint.
Right.
Yeah. So,
Check this out, A-bomb.
yeah, so it's all polished these areas. Wax and grease remover, get rid of any grease or anything. Then I'll sit that on there. Then flux it up and silver solder.
So you just silver solder in strategic spots there, or all the way around? Okay.
And there. Wherever the flux is, it'll flow.
Right.
Yeah.
So you're using oxyacetylene?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oxy's over there.
Right. So do they, like, when you get the vector file, do they restrict its use?
Yeah, as far as I know, I'm the only one with permission to do it. But they're for veterans only.
Okay.
And it's to be displayed in their house and nowhere else. It's not for public display.
Right.
Unless written approval's been given.
Okay. It's actually quiet when it gets going.
Yeah, when I get it going. I have to adjust the blade a bit, but it's got a lot of torque in it. Like you turn it off and it'll just let it run.
Yeah.
A lot of torque and those big wheels just going around.
They're rubber tyres on the wheels?
Yeah.
Okay.
What you're supposed to do is take the tension off. Otherwise you wear your
Yeah.
tyres out and you have to sort of adjust it now and then to get it running right.
Got any idea how old this one is?
Nah.
It looks vintage.
No, that's pretty. Yeah, I'll mention it to you.
Wow. It's nice. This looks really vintage. I'm thinking like 1970s.
Yeah. Got a heap of that stuff.
Just looking at the case. But just tell us about this machine, Rick.
This is a cylindrical grinder. It's a Hercus number 9. It was actually used by the Ministry of Munitions for the war effort. It's got the original tag on there from, I think it ran from the 30s to late 40s. So she's actually used to make parts for the war effort. I picked this up at auction for pretty much next to nothing. But I've had to do a bit of work to it to get it going. But yeah, it functions well now, and it's ready for use.
Well, let's see it's running.
Well, there's you got this should push over and we'll start.
So it auto trips. Oh, okay.
Yeah. Then you can set, like if you want to go in 5/10 or whatever, that'll bring the head forward.
Right.
You'll see it. See this move.
Okay.
It's like clockwork. A lot of people love shapers, but yeah, I have to get this, but yeah, I have to get a shape here.
I don't think too many people have one of these in their shop. Okay, here is the scrap we're going to be melting for making these parts for Rick. I've got a 20 kilo bucket of this. It's a mixture of 2 and 3mm brass stock, and there's more than enough for what I want to do. These are the patterns that we're going to be using for making the mold. Now these are a split wooden pattern, and I made them out of wood just simply because that's the easy way to do it. They've got the required draft angle on the ends, so it's going to be easy to get them out of the sand mold. Now, I've only done a small amount of brass casting. In fact, I've done 2 parts, a total of 2. And you can go back and look at the video on that, and it eventually turned out to be successful. But I must admit, I was sort of shooting blind when I did that part. And I really wanted some advice on how to do this properly. Now, there's a YouTube channel called Old Foundryman. I've talked about it before. He's a gentleman who lives down in Melbourne. He's had a lifetime of experience in the trade and craft of metal casting. He's an experienced pattern maker and foundryman, and it's worth checking out his channel. He's a true expert, someone who knows the trade. And he was kind enough to actually give me some advice on how to go about making the mold and to do the gating and the venting for these parts. And you're probably looking at this and saying, well, geez, why didn't Rick just go and buy the brass bar and make them from a known quality brass bar? But it wasn't about that. It was about reusing the scrap that Rick had, which is probably no good for anything else. Now this is a pattern for the riser. And the way this is going to work, we're going to have this inverted in the sand mold. This hemispherical end is going to fill up first when the metal is poured down the sprue. And as it rises up, this hemispherical section here, it's going to come through 2 gates and into the cavity for the parts that we need. Now, Old Foundryman is the expert. I'm going to follow his advice and we'll see how it turns out. But I don't know, it sounds plausible to me. So let's go ahead and get the sand molds made and see how it turns out. Okay, check out this horror story. Now, I did have a go at casting these cylinders yesterday, and I put it all on camera, and it was so embarrassing I didn't want to show it. I'll show you some bits. It's fair to say that lots of things went wrong. The first thing I noticed when I was melting the scrap that Rick gave me was that there was a lot of dross on top of the crucible when I was finished. Even as I was melting it, it was building up and I was ladling it out. And I think it's got something to do with the amount of surface area for the amount of stock that we had. I had done some other castings in brass and I didn't have the same problem with that. I also think I didn't get this hot enough, and also the pouring basin wasn't big enough, and the sprue I think was undersized for the amount of material we were trying to pour. And you can almost see what happened here. The pouring basin filled, it overflowed, went down the sprue and froze, and then it just backed up and flowed over the top of the pouring basin down the side of the flask. Alright, that didn't work. Oh dear. This cavity here, it just froze off in the runner and didn't go any further. On this one here, I got about 2/3 of that cavity filled. The other side, the other runner, once again just froze off and didn't go any further. In desperation, I dumped some of the brass down into the riser, and that's why there's that big fissure or that lamination line there. But I did actually get one good one, and that's it there. And I've already partly machined that end and part of the outside diameter, and I don't know, it looks okay. I can't find any porosity in it. It doesn't have any laminations or fissures in it. So why did I get one good one and all the others were a fail? I don't know. But you know what? I'm a stubborn individual, and I keep going long after I should give up. So I'm going to have another go. And I did promise Rick I would get these parts made, so I can't let him down. So let's go ahead and ram up another 2 flasks or another 2 molds and try again. Alright, well that's the first one done, and I'm going to close up this mould, light the furnace, and I'll do the second one. It takes me about 20 minutes to do one of these. By then the furnace should be getting warm. So this time I've made much bigger runners, and the sprue is larger, smoothed everything out so that there shouldn't be any sort of abrupt changes in the flow of the metal. So hopefully that will improve matters. Alright, what do you reckon? Tragedy or triumph? Alright. Look at that. Bit of a contrast to yesterday. There you go. 1 cylinder. 2 cylinders. Let's have a look at the other one. Okay, again, successful. Well, boys and girls, I'm calling that a success. I've got 4 good cylinders with very few defects. In fact, no defects that I can see. Surface finish is just what I get from my green sand, so don't judge me on that. I did machine this one just to see if there were any problems with it. Seems to machine okay. So I'm happy with that. And look at the amount of shrinkage that I got on that riser. So I'm thinking that's about 30 to 40 millimeters down inside that, and I think that that's the beauty of having this great big riser. If any shrinkage is going to take place, it'll be there, and that sort of protects the metal inside the cavity of the mold. At least that's my take on it anyway. I think also the difference today was that I got the metal really good and liquid and hot. Just sort of let it soak in the furnace for an extra 5 to 10 minutes once it's sort of fully melted, and I was able to get that into the 2 molds, and it was still quite liquid when I filled up the muffin pan at the end there just to make a billet. And I think having these runners oversized helped as well, and also probably just having that bigger sprue. So these are going to go up to Rick. He's going to turn these into parts for his nut all lathe, and I'll get them up to him. But there's another job I want to do first, and that also involves casting in brass, and I'll be using some of the material he gave me, and it's just well, it's a little personalized tool for Rick and myself and someone else. So check me out when we do that one, when we do the next video, and I hope you enjoyed watching me fumble about with metal casting. And I hope you enjoyed looking at Rick's workshop too. I'll put a link to his website down below, and you can also find him on Instagram. Does some amazing work. So check out the next video when we take this one step further. Okay, thanks for watching.